Palace walls don't usually announce a crisis. They leak it, and right now, something is leaking again, because as Prince Andrew's place at Royal Lodge keeps looking less secure, the spotlight isn't staying on him, it's moving fast, and it's landing on Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie for a speech, not for a ribbon cutting, but for one question that the royal family hates most. Where is the money coming from? What's different this time is not the gossip, it's the direction of the pressure. Because the pressure isn't just from tabloids anymore, it's reportedly coming from inside the system, and that's where things get dangerous. According to claims circulating via royal commentary, Prince William allegedly wanted something unusually direct, not a friendly chat, not a polite hint, a formal look, a review, a financial audit style request, and the claim is that both sisters declined. If that's true, it changes the entire tone. Because royals don't refuse internal requests unless there's a reason, or unless they believe they're still protected. But protected by who? That's the part nobody says out loud. So let's slow down and look at what this story is really about. It's not just an audit. It's the idea that William's future monarchy may come with a new rule. A simple rule. No more gray areas. And the Yorks have lived in gray areas for years. Here's the detail that keeps coming up. Critics and royal watchers have long argued that Beatrice and Eugenie had access to networks, trips, and introductions when they were younger. Trips that, according to commentary, were not always purely ceremonial. Trips that supposedly placed them near business circles abroad, and some commentators claim those introductions created relationships that didn't just end when childhood ended, they evolved. Quietly, behind closed doors. To be fair, both sisters have had modern careers. That's true, but the controversy is about the overlap. The question isn't can they work. The question is sharper, can they work while still trading on royal status? Because status isn't just a title. Status is access. Status opens rooms. Status gets calls returned. Status makes people listen. And in regions where business culture is built on so when watchers point to the Middle East and say, this is where the lines get messy, they're talking about optics. They're talking about transparency. They're talking about the thing the royal family needs more than ever right now. Control. And this is where the alleged refusal becomes a trigger. Because if William asked for a financial review and it was declined, the obvious question is, why ask in the first place? He wouldn't ask just to see. He would ask because he believes the story is bigger than the headlines, and bigger than Andrew. So what are the pressure points? One is housing, because critics keep pointing to royal properties like St. James's Palace and Kensington Palace. Properties tied to privilege and tied to public perception. When people hear renovated at public expense, they don't hear historic maintenance. They hear special treatment. And special treatment is the exact thing William is expected to cut down. Another pressure point is titles, because titles aren't just words. They are branding, they are influence, they are protection. And if a future King William decides that only working royals get protected status, then the York sisters sit in a risky middle zone. Not fully working royals, not fully private citizens, a foot in both worlds, and that is the world that creates scandal, especially when money questions appear. Now notice how this story keeps cycling. Andrew is under pressure, then the pressure moves to the daughters, then the daughters. Money becomes the focus. Then the future king becomes the threat. It's not random. It's a chain, and every link pulls the next one tighter. Because if Royal Lodge becomes a symbol of Andrew's last stand, then the daughters become the next test of the monarchy's boundaries, and boundaries are exactly what William is believed to care about. So here comes the quiet part. The part palace insiders fear. If this is truly about reform, then William doesn't need a public fight, he just needs time. Because while King Charles remains on the throne, William can push, but he can't fully enforce. That's why royal watchers keep calling it a tug-of-war. Charles manages. William reshapes. Charles smooths. William tightens. If Beatrice and Eugenie think declining changes nothing, they may be underestimating what a future reign could look like. Because the moment William has full authority, the question won't be will they cooperate, the question will be what will he remove first. And that's where this starts to feel less like gossip and more like a countdown. Stay with us, because the next part reveals why the Middle East keeps coming up and why palace housing could become the first punishment. Don't go anywhere. What we're about to reveal will leave you speechless. Here's what makes this story so volatile. It's not one accusation, it's the pattern. A pattern critics say has been building for years, and the pattern is simple. Royal association. Private opportunity. Unclear boundaries. Now, nobody is saying that having a job is wrong, but critics argue that the royal halo can create a value that doesn't show up on paper, it shows up in access. And access becomes money. That's why transparency matters. Because in a modern monarchy, perception is survival. So when commentators highlight overseas connections, especially in places where financial disclosure looks different than in the UK, they're pointing at risk, not just legal risk, reputational risk. The kind that spreads. The kind that doesn't stay contained to one person. And that's why this story keeps circling back to one word, audit. Because an audit isn't just a spreadsheet. An audit is a message. It says, we're watching. It says, we want clarity. It says, we're not protecting ambiguity anymore. And if the claim is true that the sisters declined, then the palace now has a new dilemma. What do you do when you can't force someone today, but you can reshape their future tomorrow? This is where housing becomes more than housing, it becomes leverage. Think about it, grace and favor arrangements, discounted access, royal adjacent properties. These aren't just perks. They are signals. They signal who is in, who is trusted, who is still covered, and once those signals change, the public reads it like a verdict. So if William wants reform, the easiest first move isn't a dramatic stripping of titles. That would cause a war. The easiest move is quieter. It's administrative. It's policy. It's rent. It's access rules. It's market. That's
Value.
how these things
It's
happen.
new standards.
Not with a bang.
And
Suddenly
with
the
paperwork.
sisters
Now,
aren't being
another
punished.
part of this controversy
They're being
is the idea of
modernized. Gifts. Because in royal controversies, gifts are never just gifts. Gifts are questions. Who gave it? Why did they give it? What did they want? And was it declared? Even when nothing illegal is proven, gifts can destroy trust. Because the monarchy is built on one fragile promise: that royals don't sell access. So when critics repeat stories about expensive jewelry or high-value items being linked to overseas trips, they're feeding the biggest fear the palace has right now, that someone can claim the royal brand was used as a business tool. Now, we should be careful. Commentary is not proof. Rumors are not court documents. But the palace doesn't live in court. It lives in headlines. And headlines become history. That's why optics can be more lethal than facts. Because once the public believes the line is blurred, the palace spends years trying to unblur it. So what's William's position in all this? Royal watchers say William is not sentimental about optics. He's strategic, he's future-facing, and that makes him dangerous to anyone relying on old arrangements. Because old arrangements were built on family comfort. New arrangements are built on institutional survival. And survival doesn't care who you are related to. This is also why Andrew's situation matters. Because Andrew is often described as the background shadow over everything York-related. If Andrew is forced out of Royal Lodge, it isn't just relocation, it's a signal of loss of protection. And if that protection weakens, the daughter's position weakens too. That's why this story feels like it's tightening. Everything is connected. Housing, money. Status, future, roles, even public appearances. Like Christmas walkabouts, like carefully chosen moments where the sisters appear close to the core. Royals, those moments are read like messages. Look, we're still part of this. But private contact with Andrew and Sarah, which is natural for family, becomes complicated when the public suspects the financial story isn't resolved. It becomes the same question again. Where does family end? An institution begin? Now here's the turning point. If William truly wants to remove gray areas, he doesn't need to accuse anyone, he just needs to redefine who counts as working. And once that definition changes, everything else changes with it. Because working controls security, housing, status, protection, invitations, representation, and once you lose representation, you lose the one thing that makes royal status valuable in the first place: visibility. So, if Beatrice and Eugenie are not in the working group, then every private career move becomes hotter. Every overseas trip becomes louder. Every business link becomes a question, and every unanswered question becomes a headline. Which brings us right back to that alleged audit refusal. If that refusal happened, it may not explode today, it may sit quietly, like a file in a drawer, waiting for the day William no longer has to ask, and on that day, The sisters won't be asked to cooperate, they'll be told what the new rules are. And the new rules may come with one final message: no audit, no protection. Stay with us, because in part 3, we're going to break down what titles at risk could actually look like, and why the palace may choose the most humiliating option of all: doing it quietly.